Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Hello, hello, and welcome to my first live stream of the year. And the first one in, I don't know, 2 months? 2.5 months? It's hard to remember. My voice isn't quite perfect. I'm a little bit hoarse, but I think I'll make it through. If not, we'll cut it short. Gonna wait just a moment before I get started, since I'm a couple minutes early technically. Today I will be doing some coding on a brand new feature I haven't started yet. I've written 0 lines of code so far. And in just a moment I'll talk about what I'll be doing, what the new lines of code should be covering, what we should be doing. All right. Let's go. Yes, totally. Let's go. 3 o'clock. My clock says 3. That means we're on time now. No longer are we officially early. So welcome to my first live stream of the year. I know the year is already more than a 12th over, but I was traveling for the entire month of January. So, that's what happened. I was visiting my wife's family in Guatemala, where the internet isn't that reliable, and I certainly didn't have my big screen and recording equipment and all that stuff. So it just would have been a kind of a hassle and disaster to try to do that while I was traveling. So I didn't even try. But I'm back now. Let's do some Go code. So today the feature I'm going to be working on. If you've watched my live streams in the past, you've likely seen me work on my Kivik library. Let me switch my view here so you can see my screen instead of just my face and these stars in the background. So you may recall my Kivik project database driver for Go for CouchDB and TouchDB. So I want to add a feature to this. One of the key features of this library is that you can use different backends. Just like you can in the Go standard libraries database/SQL package. You could use MySQL or Postgres or Microsoft or Oracle or SQLite or whatever. So Kivik has the same capability, and there are a number of backend drivers I've written. The 2 main ones are CouchDB and PouchDB. PouchDB is a JavaScript library, so to use that one with Go, you have to compile with Go4.js. Doesn't matter really for today. I also have a couple of others that are sort of partly written. They aren't complete. Yes, I have a file system driver one and a memory one. They aren't complete. They're useful. The file system one in particular is useful. Basically, it lets you have a stack of JSON files or YAML files on your hard drive, and you can treat them as though it's a CouchDB database. And the primary use of that driver is to be able to bootstrap a CouchDB database. So you can have all your basic documents that you want stored in Git, for example, and then you can do a replication from your file system into CouchDB to bootstrap your CouchDB instance, kind of like MySQL restore or PG restore, the opposite of PG dump or MySQL dump. And then the memory one is intended for unit testing and stuff like that, so you can run some tests against the memory driver without running a full-fledged CouchDB server. But like I said, neither of these are complete. And I've had in my mind for years, since I started this project, to have a MySQL or like an SQL-based backend, so I could plug in MySQL or Postgres or SQLite and store my CouchDB documents into one of these systems, primarily for testing purposes. And I've been recently thinking about this, and I realized something that should have been obvious to me years ago, that if I did this for SQLite, I would not have to write the memory driver anymore, because SQLite supports memory storage. So I could kind of knock out two birds with one stone and make my life a lot easier because I don't have to worry about all the in-memory data storage models and stuff like that, like I do if I do it myself. So the project today is to start writing the SQLite backend for CouchDB. Once I have it working sufficiently that it has the same features as the MemoryDB, I will deprecate and delete MemoryDB. Probably make it just a wrapper around the SQLite version. So that's the project for today. Like I said, I haven't started at all. I started thinking about it, but that's as far as I've gotten. So, I guess we'll get started. Are there any questions from the audience? I don't think I have a big audience today, but anybody who's watching, if you have questions at this time or at any time, just ask. So let's get started with a branch. Let's call it SQLite or SQLite. Let's open up my IDE and my editor. VS Code, I don't know if it really counts as IDE. And we are going to put this driver. So my package is arranged. So I have CouchDB and CouchDB are one layer below the top level in my pivot package. Then I have a directory called X, and that's where experimental and incomplete things are. That's where we find the file system driver, the memory driver, something called ProxyDB, which doesn't matter for today, a couple other things, a server. So I'm going to put SQLite in there, and I think for now I'm just going to call it SQLite. I don't know if that's the best name, but that should be like SQLite DB because these all have DB at the end. SQLite DB feels like a redundancy since SQLite is a DB. I think I'll just call it SQLite. And as I often like to do, I like to put a doc.go file in each package or each major package to where I can put documentation about the package. So let's start with that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here, actually, I'm going to open up an existing file, and I'm going to copy this header. And the reason is because the Apache license, which I'm using for this project, I think it requires this for every source file, which is honestly quite annoying. But it's not hard to do, so let's do that. Package SQLite provides a SQLite pre-packed data store for CouchDB documents. It's good enough for now. The point of today's video is not writing documentation per se. Just want to get the minimum done there. And go to SQLite package. All right. Now I'm going to close that file. I'm not going to edit that anymore for now. Now I'm going to create something called SQLite.go, where I'll start to define the main types and stuff that I want. Oops, what did I do wrong? Oh, I don't want to get added. I want to edit it. So the question here, I'm going to repeat. I'm going to read the question out loud because I have viewers on both YouTube and on LinkedIn, and I don't think that the chat goes both ways. Says, I was investigating CouchDB recently for a browser extension project to sync IndexedDB to a server, and I was thinking about running SQLite on top of OPFS. Just curious with your library. This is for accessing data on the browser backend. SQLite would make automated tests easier. So I guess I don't know enough about your use case to like offer advice. For the browser, I would recommend PouchDB. And if you want to go to the effort, which is considerable, to write Go for the front end, which can be done with Gopher.js, then this library is perfect for that purpose. But if you're going to use something normal, like JavaScript or TypeScript or something, just use PouchDB for the front end part. For the back end part, I would probably use CouchDB, or my library once it's mature, which probably won't be soon enough for your project. Yeah, I don't think I would probably use SQLite and CouchDB under normal circumstances. Once this project that I'm starting today is mature enough, it could make that really easy. But that won't be for a while. I don't know how soon, but it will be a while. I don't know if that actually answers your question, because I'm not sure if I completely understood the question. So feel free to clarify if you'd like additional details there. All right, so I have my SQLite.go file package or file where the package will start growing. But I also want to write tests today as we're going along. So let me open up a place for some tests to go. And as I like to do, I may not do this the whole time on this project because it makes the screen a little bit crowded. But I like to keep my tests on the right-hand side of my screen and my code on the left-hand side. That way I can kind of bounce back and forth between them. I might start with that. That might be too small to read, especially if you're watching on a phone, but we'll see how that goes. So let me pull up the Go doc for Kivik, since that's what we're implementing. And specifically the Kivik driver package. If you've ever written, you probably haven't, but if you've ever written a driver for the SQL or the database SQL package in the Standard Library, like I said earlier, it follows the same sort of concept. So here's the public-facing Kivik interface. And then if we scroll all the way down to the bottom here, we have this driver package. And this is what I need to implement now. I need to write an interface between this set of interfaces and SQLite. Now, the main one is, or the first one is driver. So I need to implement this interface. So, now normally I write a test first. In this case, I'm not quite going to write a test first exactly. I'm going to write a compile time assertion first. Let's create a type driver. We'll call it lowercase. Type driver struct. I may choose to export it later, but for now I'm not going to. And then var underscore driver equals driver. No, it's not going to know what that driver is supposed to mean, so I need to import that. And that should be, it's what import is. GitHub.com. Whoops. No, Kivik v4 driver. All right. So what this does, if you're not familiar, did I spell something wrong? Driver. Did you import my thing? Did I spell it wrong? Oh, I see why. Okay, let's call this drv. The problem there was it's shadowing. I had this called driver and that called driver. Or, I'm sorry, I had this variable called driver and this import called driver. And it's shadowing. There's a problem. Okay, so this is more what I expect. So driver.driver is the name of the driver I want to implement. That's this one here. We just saw in the Go doc. It's the same thing. And so what this does is a compile time assertion that says I'm creating a no, I did this wrong. I did it backwards. Like this. It's still failing, but now it's correct. So what it says is this blank. Well, let's pretend it's not blank first, right? Let's say that var x of this type equals this value, and the red squigglies are to tell me that this is an impossible assignment because this type that I just defined here doesn't implement this interface. Now I'm putting an underscore here so that it doesn't actually create a variable. It just does the validation that it's a valid type. And this red squiggly is what I'm looking for. This is the equivalent of writing a test that fails. So the failure is that this type that needs to implement this interface doesn't. So I need to add a function or a method that does what I want. So let's do that. func new client, needs to be capitalized, and it takes an argument of a name and options. Name, options. Actually, no, I'm going to leave the options blank for now. Is it options or options? Okay. Then it should return a driver.client error. And I don't have a driver.client defined yet, but I can just return nil. So this should start passing. Why doesn't it? It's because this is a function, not a method. It needs to be a method on the other here. There. Nothing's compiled. I have a question here in chat. Hello, I love your videos. Thank you. What do you think the best way to do with this job market? I don't know. Are you looking for a job, I guess? It probably depends on your skill level, your experience level with Go and with other languages. Maybe while I'm typing, you can answer a little bit more. Like, what kind of work are you looking for? What's your experience there? And I'm happy to talk about that a little bit. So we need a client. A client is another interface that does these things. So this is a great place to start writing some tests. Actually, I could probably write a test already for this. Let's do that. Let's write func test new client. So I'll write a test that's going to fail. Basically what I want is to what should be my first use case here? Probably that I get a non-nil response back, right? Let's do dot American equals P, and then client error equals. So the thing is, this name is like a DSN. So I need to figure out what that's going to be. I'll figure that out in a moment. I don't know what that'll be yet. I need to figure out what that's going to look like. So for now, I'm just going to put XXX because that's pretty obvious that it's a placeholder. And then I don't need any options, so we'll leave that nil. And actually, I'm not going to worry about the error yet. I'm going to just say if client equals nil, and t.fatal, client should not be nil. Now this test is going to fail. And here you can see it failed. So we need to make this not fail. And I think the first step for that is I want to create a type that can implement this client interface. I'm going to put the client over here on the right hand side so I can easily refer to it while I'm doing it over here. So let's create type client struct. Still has no values in it. And I'm just going to fill in the minimum necessary to make it satisfy this interface, but like returning nothing. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Driver.client equals start client. This is going to be the same assertion that I did up here, except for it's on the new type now, on the new interface. And then looks like Copilot. I probably should turn that off. Copilot can be kind of counterproductive when the point is demonstrating how to write code, but it's doing these things for me. I guess I'll leave that for now. So I need to create. I don't want all these first. I want to do it in the same order that it's defined here. So let's do func client version context.context, which returns driver.version. Right, correct. Then we'll do the alt DBs, and this should be context.context, and not map interface. It should be driver.options, and it should return slice of string and an error. Okay. Return nil. That's good enough for now. Func client. I don't want DB yet. I want DB exists. And that takes a context.context, a string, and options. Right. And then it returns bool or error. Got that one good. I want create DB. Okay. Context.context, string, and driver options are good there, and just an error. And then destroy DB, same function signature. And then DB, which takes a it doesn't take a context, it takes a string. Whoops. And driver options, it returns a driver.db and an error. All right. So now my interface is satisfied, although the logic doesn't work. But my test still fails, but now I can at least make it return something. I can make it return a client. So now the test should pass, and it does. I'm going to make a commit, and then I'm going to get back to chat and answer some questions. Oops. Minimal SQLite driver and client. Implementations. Okay. All right, so question. Getting back here to Jed, who asked about the job. So I have experience with mostly JavaScript and TypeScript, but I recently got laid off. I'm sorry to hear that. It's always a pain in the ass. I noticed that most applications know my current skills, but competition is pretty high. Yeah, the job market is. I mean, from what I hear, I'm not in the job market in the traditional sense, since I do freelance work, but it is pretty tough, as I hear, and I find Golang interesting and starting to learn it so I can stand out. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I don't know exactly what best advice to offer. I mean, I do have a couple of videos on how to do a CV for a Go developer, particularly one who's looking for their first Go job. So, one or I think I have a couple of videos about CVs. One specifically for somebody looking for their first Go job. That might be something to look at if you haven't already seen it. Practice is the thing to do, especially if you're without work right now. You probably have plenty of time. I mean, I encourage you to spend an hour a day applying for jobs. Maybe not more than that, because you don't want to get burned out and you don't want to get too depressed, especially if it becomes a long process. Spend an hour a day applying for jobs or looking for jobs to apply for, and then spend the rest of your time learning something new, whatever motivates you. If it's learning, that's ideal, because that can move you towards and help you upskill towards a new job. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe if you want to reach out, my email is pretty easy to find. It's on boldlygo.tech. You can find my email there. Feel free to reach out, send me an email, and I can try to address any specific questions you have a little bit more. Yeah. And then back to the question about CouchDB in browser application. I realized that was more of a brain dump than a question. The problem I am solving is that IndexedDB data may get evicted when the user storage goes above 80% full, causing data loss. I needed a way to sync the files to a server easily. With the caveat, I don't need or want to know what the user saves, so it needs an encryption layer. Pouch seemed like a good option. I don't want to distract you too much. I'm here today because I'm curious. Yeah, I think Pouch is a great option for that. I think there's a plugin for PouchDB to do encryption. I don't think I've used it before, or if I did, I was just playing with it. I haven't used it seriously for sure. So that might be useful for you. The nice thing about Pouch and Couch is that it's all about synchronization, so it's perfect for that sort of use case. So I would recommend looking at that. Sometimes CouchDB is called a synchronization protocol with a database attached to it. That's really its strongest selling point is the way that it does synchronization. So for that use case, I think it sounds perfect. I probably wouldn't, like I said earlier, wouldn't even bother with SQLite. At least now. Well, maybe once this project is starting is mature again, maybe then it would be useful. But I would just use PouchDB and CouchDB probably. All right. Back to the code. So obviously I'm going to have to do the same thing I just did with this database interface. Because right now we're just returning nil. This is a much longer interface. We may not get to that today. That's okay. What I'm going to do right now is start to flesh out some of these other methods I've created on the client type to make them do something. Let's start with the top. Let's start with versions. Let me create a test for that. Func test client version. All right. Copilot's with me so far. And we shouldn't be sending nil here. Context.background. All right. Why does it think yeah, error should be no. Okay, that's fair enough. And then we want version, ver. And I'm going to create a variable called want_ver. So that should be driver.version. And then I'm going to do a comparison. So if d colon equals cmp.diff want ver. So cmp.diff is a nice library to do sort of human-ish friendly diffs of structures or other data types in Go, and it's really useful for these sort of tests. And it returns a string. So I'm checking to see if it's a non-empty string, that means there was a difference between the two types, and then I call t.fail. So we can already see that there is a failure. So I am wanting at the moment I'm telling it what I want is a pointer to driver.version. That's not actually what I want, but that's what I'm telling it so far. And that's already different than what I'm getting because I'm getting nil. So before I make it return this thing, since I wasn't actually done writing my test, I'm going to fill it in with some values that I actually care about. So I pop over here to the definition of this thing, and I'm going to put some stuff in here. So we want version, and I don't know what the version should be yet, but I'll just put zeros for the moment. And vendor. Vendor, we'll call it Kivik, because that's the name of my library. So let's see what we could do here. I'll just call it version 0.0.1 for now, I guess. I'm not sure what I should call that version. And so I can think of three possible answers to what the version should be. One is I version the library itself, and in that case, 0.0.1 makes sense. The other is I could use the version of the Kivik package as a whole, which is 4.2.1, I think. The problem with that is that it kind of gives the impression that this particular library is at version 4.2.1, and it's really like a pre-release of a pre-release of a pre-release. And the other option is to not do a version at all. It doesn't really matter right now. It won't really matter until I get like kind of close to a pre-release. When somebody might start using this and they want to compare if they're using the latest version or not. I'll use 0.0.1 for now. So what I'm going to do to make that happen, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The test is failing now. This is what matters. Now we can see the test it says it wants this, but it's giving this instead. So let's make it return an actual value we care about. And by the way, I could have this also look at, maybe I should have it look at, I don't know, the version of the SQLite library or something, include that. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I might worry about that in the distant future if it ever matters, but for now I'm not going to, and that could potentially be part of this features thing or something. So truthfully what that means is I can just return a static thing here. Version. And but I'm not going to just inline this stuff. I'm going to put version. I should probably spell it right. And vendor. But I'm going to use some constants for this. So I'll just put those constants right here for now. Version vendor. Let's do it like that. There might be better names for this. I'll worry about that later. It's really easy to change. So now my test passed again. Let me go ahead and commit this small change. Nicolan? Am I saying that right? From Colombia. Bienvenido. This started my journey with the Go book, For the Love of Go, that you recommend. Oh, great. That's a good book. I'm glad you found the book helpful, or are finding it helpful. Good to have you here. All right, so now we're going to get to something a little more interesting. Honestly, that's a really boring function because it just returns two static strings. Nobody cares about that. But these other functions actually need to talk to a database, so it's going to be more interesting because we have to actually make the database do something. But let's start with our test. Test all DBs. Go ahead and let Copilot fill the thing in, even though it's probably going to get most of it wrong. Which is not so bad. Now, I'm going to remove this last one. What I'm going to do is say want DBs, and I'm gonna make up. I'm gonna say I want foo and bar, right? Now that's not gonna exist yet because nothing exists yet. The database doesn't even work yet, but we'll get there. All right, and then this is before I'm going to do. Oh, that's what I wanted. Copilot got me there. All right, so it's going to fail because it's returning nil. So now I need to actually implement some sort of logic to do something here, right? So the first thing I need to come up with. Well, I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. I need the client to include some sort of pointer to a database, a SQLite database, right? So I want to use a PureGo implementation. I don't remember what it's called, but we're going to find out here. Golang SQLite without CGO. How about that one? A couple different options. So I could use this one, Zombie Zen. I just recently interviewed the author of this package on the Cup of Go podcast a few weeks ago. It was a fun interview. The reason I'm not interested in using this one right now is this does not use the standard libraries database /SQL interface. It uses a custom interface, which means it's far more powerful for talking to SQLite. However, I don't think I need that power. Further, one of my long-term goals here is to have a driver for MySQL and Postgres and potentially Oracle and Microsoft SQL and whatever. And if I can use the database SQL library for that, there'll be a lot more code I can reuse. So I don't want to use this one. The most popular one is MatN. But this one depends on CGO, which means I need to compile with C, and I need to have C as a runtime dependency, or C libraries. So I prefer to avoid that one. I don't know if there's one here that talks. Yeah, here we go. So Go SQLite 3, the CGO package. If you want to build your app using SQLite, you need GTC. However, after blah blah. So I want the one that doesn't do that. I don't remember what it's called. That's what I'm looking for here. Let's see if it's mentioned here. Let's look for Awesome Go. Awesome Go, if you're not familiar, is a semi-curated, loosely curated list of Go packages that have to meet a certain minimum requirement of sort of like quality or whatever. Here's SQLite with PureGo. Is this the one I want? This doesn't sound like I don't think I can. It starts SQLite as a exec and talk to us. No, that doesn't sound right. This, I think, is what I want. Only 479 stars, but I think that's okay. I mean, as long as it's supported. When it was last updated? 2 months ago? That's recent enough. It's not like SQLite is bleeding edge technology that should be updated every couple days or something. So let's try this one. Where's the report? Here we go. So before I do this, I'm going to do one more Google search. When I'm trying to compare things, I often type in the thing I want versus and see what matches come up. Oops, what matches come up. Here go. Let's go to form. What does that mean? Is it specifically for Gorm? Because if it is, I don't want it. I'm not going to use Gorm. Okay, there's Go, SQLite, and then there's this SQLite from the same author. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what I want. All right, so here's the import path. Let's do a go get. And while that's running, which you can click, I'm going to come over here and import that thing with a blank import because I want to load it for the side effects, right? There we go. All right, back to chat here. I have a couple questions. Hi John, any plans on writing a book on Go? Not really. I mean, so there's actually a complicated answer to that. I actually started writing a book about data street listings in Go. It's available. You can buy it if you want on Leanpub. I think it's $9.99 US. It's incomplete, and I probably won't finish it at this point. Partly because I've gotten other priorities, and partly because most of what I've written will become obsolete very soon once encoding JSON v2 is out, which I don't know when that's going to be. It'll probably be a year or so at least. I could potentially rewrite it to work with JSON v2, but I probably won't. So yeah, probably not in the near future. I do have a book in mind. I may start writing, but it's not about Go. Also, there's a lot of really great Go books out there right now, so it would be hard for me to think of a Go niche that isn't already fulfilled by an excellent book out there. So, I mean, if I come up with a niche, a particular need, if there's a book I want to read or that I feel needs to exist that doesn't, I might consider writing it, but I haven't found that yet. Next question from Talia. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Hi, John. I'm a JavaScript engineer for 3 years and now learning Go from Udemy. I'm not able to understand the entire code, but trying to pick up some learning points from your experience. Well, I'm glad to have you here. If you have any specific questions, just holler. Just say so. All right. Where was I? Okay, so I have the driver imported now. I'm not doing anything with it yet, but I should. So let's add SQL.db here. So I usually use a library called SQLX. Because it makes a lot of this stuff simpler, a lot of database queries simpler. This library, I really highly recommend this library. I'm probably not going to use that on this project for two main reasons. The biggest reason is to reduce the number of imports in this in Kivik. If I add that, then I have to pull that in and all of its dependencies in, and every user of Kivik has to pull all that in, whether they actually need it or not. So I'd rather keep my dependency tree as smaller. And second, my use of SQL is going to be very limited here. Like there's probably only going to be a couple of select statements and a couple of simple insert statements. And so I don't mind a little extra verbosity for that sort of stuff. I'm basically going to use SQL, whether SQLite or Postgres or whatever, as sort of a glorified key value store. So I don't really need the complexity that comes from that, or I don't have the complexity that would warrant using it. Because it's going to be a very simple schema, super simple schema. So those are the reasons I'm not using that. I'm going to use straight SQL. So now I have imported database SQL, and I have defined a field in my client struct to do that, but I need to initialize that. So let's do that next. All right, let me see if that is the correct name here. I don't want the Gorm one. I think I closed the wrong window earlier. If I recall, though, it was called Go-. Yes, okay. And SQLite is right. Okay. So now I need to decide. I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the video. I need to decide what name is going to represent, and I'm going to put that in the documentation here. So basically, what I want name to be right now is a, well, actually before I say that, let's see what the options are here. Okay, so normally it would, the value I need to pass to open would be path to some .db or colon memory, right? There's a little bit of a problem though. So basically what I want to do is I want one table in SQLite to represent one database in CouchDB. So I kind of want that string to be this part, like the path to, and then when they call DB with a name, that's this function here, I haven't implemented yet, that name would be the name.db thing. However, when we're using memory, we need some way to distinguish that. Like if they call memory twice in the same program, should they get the same database, or should they be able to specify that they want database 2 and database bar simultaneously? And I want the latter. So I need to come up with some way to do so. So basically, what this is telling me actually is that I'm not going to be calling SQL open here. Instead, I'm going to be storing that name. Let's just do that. And storing that in the struct. And then these various functions will be calling that thing. So all DBs, okay. Yeah. So now what I need is for all DBs, it's not actually going to open the database, is it? It's going to look at the list of databases. I wonder if that's actually the correct way to go here. So, okay, so there's two use cases here, right? There's the memory use case and the disk use case. For the disk use case, I could just have this, like, read the directory. I'll do some pseudocode, right? No, I don't actually care about that. But the idea is loop through these entries, and for each one that matches the right pattern, it looks like a .db file or something, add it to the list, return that. That won't work for memory though, and I don't know if anything will work for memory, if there's even any way to query that in memory. So I have to think about that. Not enough documentation here to answer my question. Let me see. What is this? I wonder if this is the driver actually. Not sure. Trying to understand the difference between this one, modernc.org/SQLite, and this one that apparently wraps it. Maybe modern C isn't actually compatible with database SQL database. It looks like it is. It is. Okay, I want to use this one then. I don't know what the other one provides that this one doesn't. But for now, I want to use this one. Maybe I'll change my mind later and go back to the other one, but I want to use this one for that. So let's change this. Go mod tidy. Create a mod file. Move the dependencies I don't actually need anymore. This is going to break. I'm quite certain of it. Let me see what version of Go this requires. Mod says 119, so that's not going to work. Because Kivik requires 117 or newer, and it needs to support 117. So I need to pick an older version of this, if that's possible. Okay, what I'm going to do, this is a hassle. This is one thing that really annoys me about Go tooling. It's really hard to see which version of a particular library supports an old version of Go. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to clone that library locally, and then I can look through Git history for that project. Looks like that'll take a while. Let me answer some questions here. John, don't want to start World War III on LinkedIn, but what are your thoughts on Go frameworks? Do you use them? In general, no, I don't use them. I mean, so one of the projects I'm working on uses Gin. I really don't like Gin very much. I don't feel like it's very idiomatic. One framework I have used much more extensively in other projects is Echo. I don't like it either, although it's more idiomatic. It's very bulky and big. It has a huge surface area. And there's like 3 of the 6,000 features of it that I think are useful. So in that sense, I'm not a big fan. Most of the stuff that frameworks can do, standard library can already do. It's just not tied together in a nice tidy package. So that's something that's annoying. And I just realized I'm sharing my screen in this little silly window. I'm gonna make it bigger for you guys to see. 1 second. Yeah, let's go like that. That'll be easier. Oh, and the chat suddenly shows up too. That's nice. I hope the chat fades away before long. I don't want to leave it up there forever. So no, in general I don't use frameworks. I like I like a more piecemeal approach with libraries or toolkits or something like that. Alrighty, done checking this out. So I want to find when Go.mod last supported Go 117 and find that version. This is 120.0. What? Let's do a git blame, Go.mod. Let's see when is that last update. Alright, that was 118, so we're going to do git blame one version before that, and probably the commit before this was 117. Whoa. There's a lot of update dependencies. Okay, yeah, 117. Okay. Oh, it used to be in a subdirectory. Oh, they deleted something in a subdirectory. Anyway, here's what I want. 117. Alright, so git log, blah, blah, blah. So what I want to do, I want to search GitHub now, or GitLab for that commit, and see the one before that. I guess I could just search. So I want. Okay, here, I don't have to search. It tells me 1.20.4. So this should be the version I want that still supports Go 117. Let me try to get that. We'll get at the 1.20.4. See if everything's happier if we broke stuff. Something's broken. Let's do compat 7. Let's see if that works. Okay, good. All right. We have our new dependency, the direct one, and it's at the right version. What's the current version? How many versions behind are we? 2.28. So hopefully there's something useful between 120 and 128 that we care about. Probably not, since I don't care about very many fancy features, but we'll see. And then there's all the indirect dependencies that it pulls in. All right. Yeah, test together. This should be passing, I think. Entry declared and not used. Oh yeah, that's what it is. That was my pseudocode that I'm not actually going to keep, so let me delete that. All right, so I was on a tangent there, wasn't I? I was trying to see how I can query for existing tables. So let me think about that for a second. Let me think about that. The SQLite. Yeah, okay. So I had my mental model wrong. In SQLite, you create a database, and that database itself can contain multiple tables. So I actually do want to create that database connection here. So I'm going to go back to what I had before. One db, SQL.db, and I need to create that connection here. So I'm going to do db error equals SQL.open name. So let's rename this from name to DSN so it's more clear to the user what it is. Error does not equal nil, then we just return that. And if it's not nil, then we set it. Okay, we're getting somewhere here. Now we're still failing here. And this client object is invalid, so we're going to do d colon equals drv, and c colon error equals now I'm going to use memory for this. It'll be an in-memory store. Now the tests are still going to fail, but what I want to do now is create two tables. Two tables of these names. That's gonna be really naive. Like I might want to have something more specific than just table names, because I might want to verify that they're of the right schema. But for now, I'm gonna do the simple thing, right? So let's do this. C, yeah. Wonder if is that enough? I don't even know if it's enough. Let's find out. Do I have SQLite installed locally? Budget. .db. Create table foo. Does that do anything? No, it doesn't. Okay. Whoops. Maybe close that. So I want create table foo, and then I want to put some columns in there. Let's say ID integer. I think that'll work. I should have left my terminal open to test that. Database. It's also not correct. Why not? I'll create database. I don't want that. I want to create table. Create table to the integer. There we go. I shouldn't have called panic here. I should have put that fatal. All right. C.db undefined. thought I defined it right here. It's right here, right? What's wrong? Oh, I know why. Because I need to do a type assertion. So client, I'm going to say C. There we go. What are you complaining about now? K client isn't Qubit client. Actually, no, it's not Qubit client. Yeah, that's what it is. No, it's a driver client. So if anybody's confused about what I just did there, the problem was that this new client returned an interface, and that interface doesn't have any fields because it's an interface, it's not a struct. So I have to convert back to the underlying type of pointer to client. So that's what this does. This does that type assertion. So now I can access that DB method and call the database exec directly. Let's also have it create bar. The tests are still failing, but now the database has 2 tables in it. So now what I need to do is figure out how in SQLite to look at the number of tables, or look up the list of tables. Let's see how to do that. Sure, Google can help. Dot tables. Not sure if that works. In here, this is what I want. All right, so now within this all DBs, we're going to do rows error equals c.db.query context. We'll just return error. Otherwise, we're going to defer rows close, and then we're going to create DBs. All right. Copilot's doing a good job so far. This should make the test pass. In fact, they are passing. But before we deal with that, let me walk through what I just did, or what Copilot just did for me. So we're calling select name from SQLite schema to get the list of all table names in the database. And if we get an error, we return that. Then we defer the closing of the rows. That's important to do because you don't want to leave that rows object open even after you return. And by doing it in defer, then whether we get an error anywhere else, it's going to be certain to be done. Then we loop through the iterator. Basically, rows.next returns true if there's still more data to be read. And then for every row, we scan. It only has one value. We selected the one value here, select name. We scan that into @db. This is exactly the kind of thing that SQLX library I was talking about would make simpler. If I were using that, this whole function would look like this. db.select. I'm not going to type the whole query again. That would be the whole function right there. Right? So basically this select thing in dbx does all that iterating over the loops for you and everything. Makes it nice and simple. But we're not using that. I'm happy to have a little bit longer code because, like I said, I'm only going to have a few of these queries, and I'd rather have fewer dependencies. So, and we see the tests are passing. So let's go ahead and commit this. Directory. That's an extra white space. Let's go. Yeah. Simple / naive implementation of all DBs. All right. Now, what I have to decide, and I may or may not decide this right now, is I alluded to this. How I want do I want to treat every database in that file as though it's part of CouchDB or it's a Kivik database, or do I want to check that the schema matches what I want, or do I want to put a Kivik prefix on all the databases created by Kivik? I'm not sure the answer to that. But I think I'm just going to leave it for now. I don't know if I would want to be able to create a database and then create some custom tables in it in Kivik tables and only treat Kivik tables as Kivik tables. I don't know how I want to know that. So I'm going to leave it like it is for now and just treat all tables as Kivik tables and move on to the next one. So DB exists. Let's create a test. Copilot created 2 tests for me, but didn't do a very good job. And I guess that's a good thing because I can talk about it. So it largely copied my logic above, right? And it creates an in-memory database instance. It creates a table called foo. It checks to see if foo exists, and if it doesn't exist, it complains, so that's good. Then it checks if bar exists, and it shouldn't, and if it does, it complains. The problem is these should be 2 separate tests. So I'm going to make them 2 separate tests. And the reason for that is I want each test should test one thing. And right now I have one test that tests 2 things. It tests for the exist case and for the not exist case. Let's do this. T.run. Now this does mean more duplication, but I don't mind duplication really. Especially in tests, especially. I don't mind using the same DRV instance in both cases. Because it's not really a thing anyway. It's not actually a thing, right? Not exist. So I'm going to delete the one that Copilot created, and I'm just going to create my own here. And I'm going to delete the insert. I'm going to change both of these to just t.fatal and then call error so I can see what the error string is that happened. Now it should pass. Who should exist? Where does it say that? Right here. The table foo. This should be. That should be here. Whoops. I'm calling. What I just noticed is that I'm calling DB exist on the type asserted instance, which isn't a problem. It's just not what I want. I'd rather be calling on the interface version. Just it doesn't really matter in this case, but it's the same underlying value. But the interface is what I'm trying to test, so it feels familiar to be testing that. I'm still confused here. So line 94, right here, we're getting foo should exist, but it doesn't apparently. Oh, I know why. Because I haven't actually updated the code yet to do anything. So, obvious. All right, so we're going to do. We need to add some database logic here. We need to actually see if that thing exists. So we're going to do something quite like this. Not exactly the same. So let me go ahead and copy and paste it to begin with and then modify. So I'm going to call query row context. And that's going to return a single what does that return? I think it returns a row object. So I want var exists bool. And then on here, this is scan. Okay. And so this should say true, select true from blah, 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 where blah, blah, blah. Except now I don't need all this stuff. I need where type equals table and name equals question mark. I'm going to need to pass that value, which is name. Whoops, I'm missing that here. I need to put yet. And then I can just put a blank identifier here. All right. Now I want to return this nil in this case. Put it down here. Now there's a special case I need to check for. If error does not equal nil, and where's that is return false. So this query row function can return a special error called error no rows if there are no results. Now we don't want to treat that as an error in our case. We want to just treat that as not found, right? So that's why I'm checking for it specifically. And if I get error does not equal, if I get a non-nil error and it's not that error type, then I return that error. If it is that error type, I fall through, and then I return the value of exists, which would be false in that case. Or if that row did exist, then it would be true. So that makes sense? And now my test is passing again. So let's commit that. All right. Now, I'm not sure why this is not being executed. I would expect, oh, but because it's not, I don't have a different error. I'm not going to worry about that case right now, and I could go to the effort to create a test that would cause this to return an error other than error no rows. I'm not sure how off the top of my head, and it's not a test case that I really think is that important to test. I mean, I want it to work, but I have at that point I'm mostly testing the standard library, not my own code. So I'm not really that concerned about it. So I'm gonna leave that alone. Now create DB, and let's do that one next. Let's see how well Copilot does this time. It tries to do this type assertion that it doesn't need. I don't know why it does that, but I can delete that. So this test looks pretty reasonable. It uses createDB to create a database, and then it checks to see if it exists. We already know that DB exists works. So that seems reasonable. Like we could check directly with the database, but we would just be doing this. So it seems easier to do it like this, right? I have no problem with that. I think that's good. And we're going to want to add another test case as well that the database already exists, but we'll do that in a moment. For now, let's get this one working. It says foo should exist, but it doesn't because we didn't create it. So let's add the logic here to create it. I'm going to need to see here. I'm going to need to add links to these things. Now you can create databases with certain options, but I don't think they're ever going to be relevant for this driver, or they certainly aren't now. Like if you're using sharding and things like that. I don't think I care about that probably ever. I certainly don't care about it right now. Set context, right? Create table, name, okay. Now this is a little bit dangerous. There's a potential for some SQL injection here. We may not care in that SQLite case that much since it's going to be running locally, but if I ever copy this logic to Postgres or something, I probably care. So I want to do some standardization here. I have to think about how I want to do that. So if it's not obvious, the problem I'm talking about is imagine somebody calls create db context.background, and then they pass in the name of the database, and the database is called foo semicolon drop table users, or something silly like that, right? In principle, that would, if you just copy and paste that in there, you're going to end up dropping the table or potentially dropping the table. So we don't want that. Let me see if there's any like quoting capabilities in this library I'm using. Or something like that. So one thing I could probably do is make sure that I'm only accepting database names that are valid for according to CouchDB rules. I don't know if that's quite strict enough. Let me see what the rules are for that. I know I've done that before. What? Database. Valid names. There we go. All right, so we can use letters A through Z. Let's start with A through Z. Lowercase letters, digits, and then these characters. I don't think we can do anything really dangerous with SQL injection that way, but I'm not 100% sure. Some of these are special in SQL. Certainly enough there to make an invalid, to give a syntax error at least. So that means we need to quote it. Let's confuse double quotes around the table name. Double quotes are not in this list. Let me do an experiment here on the SQLite command line. Create table, and I'm going to copy every one of those, like every letter A, B, C, D, 0, 1, 2, 3, underscore dollar sign, open paren, close paren, plus, minus, and slash. Well, that's simple. I just need to quote it. Super. Well, that's easy. Okay. So, let's create a regular expression. Before I quote that, like if somebody's input had the quote character in it, then there would still be the potential for some SQL injection. So I want to first validate that the name doesn't contain any invalid characters, since that list is fairly small and I already have the regular expression defined here. I wonder if that expression probably already exists somewhere in my library. Let me do a quick look. This is it. Valid DB name. Must compile. Yes. Not. Okay. So in that case, I want to return a bad request. Yeah, that's good enough. Also in a lowercase this message, but otherwise okay. Which means I really need a test for that. So let me go ahead and actually, before I commit this, or before I save this file, let me add a test. I'm going to comment out this one. C.run, valid name. And create, yeah, that's an invalid name. There should not be, oh no, the error should be nil. Yeah, like this. I guess maybe that's what it said. I'm not sure. I don't want to just check that there's an error. I want to check that it's the error I expect, right? Font error, font error equals. And I want to check that it returns the right HTTP status. So errors in Kivik include an HTTP status, which is an HTTP service. So I want to check that as well. So want status, want class, status. Use. Should not be okay. There is no. So now the test is failing. Let's do this. All right, now that test is passing. Now let's create a new test. Run success. So I'm going to copy and paste this one I commented out into this new function. And uncomment it. All right, so uppercase foo fails because it used to be lowercase. Lowercase foo should succeed. And we want to put some quotes around it. Now that we've validated it's a valid name. Quote, double quote, that. No, that schema is still nonsense. That's not what I want, but I don't care about that just yet. The goal is, one of the reasons for TDD is to help you focus on one problem at a time. And that problem right now is, can I create the table? You know, I don't know if I care about the result here. I might just be able to do this. And I might care about the error here. Like, no, I will. I know I will in just a moment, but I don't yet. So we're going to do this. My tests are passing. Now I'm going to add a new case, a new test case for the table already exists, or database already exists. So I'm going to call createDB twice. And the second time, I do want an error. But I want a very specific error. So the test is passing, but I want a very specific error. So let's copy the logic I had before. Error. So I don't actually know what I want it to be yet. That's fine, I guess. Here equals nil. It should not be nil. And then here, and then the status, I want the same exact concept I had with the status before. I want it to be a conflict. At least I think I do. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure that's true, but since I'm mimicking CouchDB, I want to copy their behavior. So put can return a 201 created. Oh, I got that wrong earlier. Well, actually, no, I guess it doesn't matter right here. This is a success. I don't worry about this anyway. Precondition failed. So that's different than conflict, but that's okay. I'm glad I checked. That's what I want. Error should be blah dot blah. Let's put the actual in there. Error table foo already exists. Okay. So what I need to do here is detect that. If error does not equal nil and errors.is. So I need to look up how this package that I'm using handles error. Is this the right one? Yes. Alright, what's the SQL error code? Is that in the error message? Oh, maybe it is. Is that it? Is 1 the error code? SQLite error code. Well, here's what we're going to do. First, if error equals nil, we're just going to return nil. We'll be done. That's easy, right? In the other case, we need var SQLite error, which is of type. What was the type? Is it just called SQLite.error? Yep. This errors.as. I don't know what error code I need yet, so I'm just gonna, if it's of the right type, then I want to print some details out about it. And I can print out, I guess I can print out code. That's the thing that I want. See what that code is. And then I'll just return error. Let's see. Let's see, non-nil pointer. Okay. Code is 1. I don't know what that means. I mean, that might be what I want, but that seems suspicious. SQLite error. Yeah, that's not very useful. Well, I guess that's more specific than others might be, so I'll at least do that. And SQLite error.code equals 1. I don't know why there's not a constant for that, or is there? I missed it. Error code state. There are no constants. I thought this was a constant, but it's not. It's a map definition or something. Okay, what's SQLite? What are we looking at here? But this is where our constants are. What's the errors here somewhere? SQLite. I don't know. But most useful package. I'm pretty sure this is generated code. This is the kind of stuff you would normally use. I'll just stick. I'm going to use one, but I'm going to create a constant for it. SQL error code. What do we call it? SQLite error. Code. For that. I'm going to put a link to this page here for future reference. All right, so now I have a check. It's not as specific as I want, because I imagine there's a lot of things that could cause this to happen. Let me see what flexibility I have in this package. I don't think I have very much. Here, I get code. This is a numeric thing. How about I get the string? So I guess I have to do some string comparison, which I hate. That's all it even has internally. All right, so we'll do this, and I'm going to break this to different lines. And strings dot contains what table already exists. Well, I'll just do already exists, because I know I'm looking for a table. Like, that's never going to be ambiguous in this case, because I'm creating a table. It wouldn't be that a column already exists or something like that. So I'll just look for already exists. And if I get that, then I return error precondition failed database already exists. All right. Otherwise, I fall back to returning whatever the error is. All right. Like this. Now we've implemented create database. All right, one more to do before we get into the fun stuff with the database actual access. And that is to destroy a database. Test client destroy DB. And I want at least two cases here. I want one for the database doesn't exist, one for that it does. So let's do p.run success. And I think this is a success case here. So create a database, we destroy it. This is successful. All right. And it's going to fail because when we call destroy DB, it does nothing. So it still exists here. So let's fix that. Actually, we probably want three test cases. We want destroy the database that works. Oh yeah, I guess there's just two, right? The database either does exist or it doesn't. The third case could be we try to destroy it and it fails, but I'm not going to worry about that because that's testing SQLite more than my own library. Basically, I want to do is kind of do this thing again. But now it's drop table blah. Okay, so I need to do that validation again here. So I could do the same validation on the other functions above. It's not as essential there from a safety standpoint, because in these other cases where I'm seeing if the table exists, I'm just passing it as a query parameter. So if somebody passed in something nonsensical, like one of my examples, drop table users or something, it would just get a not found error, which, by the way, I'm not doing correctly. I should be. I need to test for that. it'll be quick, but I'll need to add the test and that functionality. Do that when I finish this one. Okay. So anyway, the point is I'm a lot less concerned about that up there because it's not a safety concern, and it will already give a useful error message. So, I don't think it's that important if they get a 400 invalid input versus a 404 not found when they input a database name that doesn't exist. That can't exist because it's invalid. I don't think that's a big deal. If I change my mind later, I can add that functionality again. Drop table blah, and then let's see if my test passes there. Define C. No, of course, we can do this. All right. Okay, now my test passes. Let me finish the cases for the destroy DB. I just need one more, I think, and then I'll go back and do that not found. Run doesn't exist. So I'm going to copy paste this. And then I'm going to delete the create DB. And I'm going to delete this check. And instead, I'm going to copy some of the logic before this error. If error does equal nil, then now I don't know what error I should get, so I need to check the documentation in CatchDB. So delete, it could be not found. That makes sense. That's what I would expect, I guess. So. All right. Now, I don't know what that error is going to look like. I'll have to figure that out, right? But I want it to be const error. Database not found, I guess. And const status is not found. Okay, and we'll do that check there. All right, now I expect two failures here, probably. I got no such table foo. So this is the same error code as the other one, which is why I don't like that error code too much, but that's what we get. So basically, I can copy the same kind of logic I had up here. So if error equals nil, we just return early because we're done, no problem. Otherwise, we get to do this with the check. Except it'll be already exist now. It's going to be not found, and we're going to change this to status not found and database not found. Working error should be database not found dot message foo. Okay, so something's not right here. Message table. Oh, this is a message table before I check. There we go. Now it's passing. Commit this. Implement destroy DB. All right, now I'm going to go do this one. So DB exists needs to do the right thing for not found. Right here. I wonder if that even matters. No, because not exist isn't an error. So no, I don't need to do that. What I was thinking was that error code needed to include the 404 status, but there is no error code in that case because it's just a Boolean. So yeah, I don't need to do that. That's cool. I think we're done with that stuff. 4:30 here where I am. So I've been going an hour and a half. Let me go ahead and push this up. Create a pull request, merge that. A pretty good stopping point here, I think. A logical stopping point, that is. Because we've done all the required methods on the client, except the one that returns the database. Now there are some optional methods on the client. Let me look at those. Maybe I want to do some of those since we still have some time here. DB Statser. I think I'll do an all DB Statser. Replication stuff. I may or may not ever do replication. I probably will at some point, but right now I'm not going to do replication. That's not a priority right now. DB stats returns stuff like how big the database is and stuff like that. Since our databases are empty right now, that's probably not that useful. Let me see what kind of stats these are. How many documents there are, how many have been deleted. So I will implement that, but not right now. Because before I can do that, I kind of need to know what my schema is going to look like. And as you may recall, my schema right now is just ID integer. It's not the proper schema, so I need to update that at some point. That will be coming very soon once we start implementing the database stuff. But let me look again. I closed that prematurely. Let's see if there's any other client-related methods I want to add. I think not. The security maybe. Just think about it. I probably won't. No, I might want that. So the CouchDB has this idea of security. Although this isn't on the client, this is on the database. I don't know if I'll do that either. But anyway, the idea is you can store a security document to find who does and doesn't get read or write access to the database. I'm not sure if that makes sense for SQLite since it's all local file system permissions and stuff. Anyway, it probably doesn't make sense to begin with. I think I'm essentially done with the client. We'll let these tests run and it takes a little while. With 25 minutes remaining, I suppose I'll just start on the next bit and start doing the database stuff. I'll probably do that in a new file. Because this one's, it's not that long, 150 lines roughly. But the database, there's a bunch of functions, a bunch of methods to implement there, and it's going to get long. So I'm going to put these in a new file. Let's create db.go and dbtest.go. dbtest over here. Let's put our little preamble. And we're going to do type db. Did I already do that? I don't think I did. Okay. Struct. Server.db equals blah blah blah. Okay. Oh, I said strict. That's not correct. Struct. So now I need to fill in all those little nitty-gritty methods that satisfy the driver interface. So we'll get started there. All docs is the first one. And it's not the right interface or the right signature. It should take a context.context and options. And then the returns drivers run. Okay, that part's right. Okay. And we have create doc. db create doc. It takes context, interface, and options. Not this. If anyone's wondering, and then returns 1, 2 strings and an error. If anyone's wondering why I use interface curly braces instead of the word any, because I'm supporting Go 1.17, and that any keyword was added in 1.18. So, funcdb put. This takes context, a string, an interface, and options. Well, we got that right, and it returns a string and error. We got that right, okay. Then we have funcdb get, which is context, a string and options, a context string options, and then it returns a document, a pointer to document, and an error. Okay. funcdb delete. Context string options, context, this has 2 strings, I just want 1. Okay, context, string options. Going to return a string and an error. It's funny to me how Copilot sometimes is just so spot on and sometimes it's so brain dead. Stats. So here, this is the stats I was talking about a moment ago. There's already a function here to return that. So once I've implemented this one, I might as well implement the other one that returns basically bulk stats, multiple databases at once. Take the context, return stats error. That's good. Compact, which takes context, returns an error. Not something I probably care about right now, but I might care about it eventually. Then we have conc db compact view, context string error. Okay. So we have view cleanup. Takes the context, returns an error. Good. Changes. Takes the context. The options returns changes interface error. Okay. Put attachment. Takes the context. And then one string. There's a bunch of strings. Not what I want. And then one string, and then pointer to driver attachment. And then options. And it returns a string and an error. Okay, so that's right. And then get attachment. Func db get attachment, which takes the context, the string, the driver options. And returns pointer to attachment and error. Okay, that was right. Delete attachment, takes the context, 2 strings and options, returns a string and an error. Okay, just 2 more. Takes the context, 2 strings and options, returns a rows and an error. And finally close, which just returns an error. Doesn't take a context. Alright, our interface is now complete. I thought it was. What's this? Type of query. Okay, what did I get wrong there? Context, not context. It's 2 strings. There we go. Let's check our PR. How's it going? Tests are still in. Some of these tests are flaky, so I probably have to rerun some of them. I don't know if these are actually broken. All the PatchDB tests failed. Have a look. I don't even know it failed. It looks like it passed. Rerun that. Meanwhile, let me check these other tests here. See if it is a fluke that they all failed at the same time, or if there's actually a problem. Yeah, this is the kind of flakiness we have. Let's rerun that. For all of the failed ones, we'll come back in a few minutes and see what's left. Sometimes they all pass on the first time, on the first try. Sometimes I have it like this, where most of them fail and I have to rerun them. It makes it really hard to tell when it's a legitimate failure and when it's just flaky. Alrighty, let's go back to our code. So I can close this window now. Let's get started. Shall we start with all docs? I'm not sure. I usually start with all docs because I just kind of go through the list, but I need to create the schema. So I might start with put, because that will make it a little bit easier to create the schema. So I'm probably gonna spend the next 10 minutes, maybe the rest of the time, talking about what that schema is supposed to be and thinking it through a little bit. So I'm gonna open this blank document, or an empty document here. Start taking some notes here. So there are some required fields for each document. The thing is that these documents are just JSON blobs, right? They don't contain a schema. There are some required fields, so you can think of that as a schema. The two main ones are ID and rev. There are a few others. Some of them are kind of implicit, or they aren't always there. One is deleted, which can be set to true. And let me look at the documentation here to get a better sense. Documents. There are attachments, which is a map of file name to content. Actually, more than just the file name, it's the content type, maybe some other things too, encoding. I'm not sure how I want to represent that, but I'll think about it. So here you can see an example of a document that contains the attachments map, the ID, the rev, and then some arbitrary stuff, right? So the main thing is arbitrary stuff. So like the absolute simplest I could do, my schema would be something like create table foo ID string, rev string, data. So I think it's text, not string. Do something like this, right? And then I could just include attachments in the data. Let me look at the list of data types here. We get null, integer, real, text, and blob. So I'm not at all sure how I want to store attachments. I'll have to think about that. Probably punt on that for now. Let me look at the documentation a little bit more. This is honestly the kind of problem I probably should think about for a few days, or at least one sleep cycle, to think about how I want to do it. Let me see what other kinds of columns exist here. Probably isn't the best look. Let me look at my own FSVD thing here. I have some tests. Probably help me some stuff. Revisions, that's one. Although that is calculated, so that based on rev, so that won't be stored independently, I don't believe. Maybe I want to cache it at some point, but for now I'm not worried about that. So I think for now I'm going to go with a really simple schema that looks basically like this. And I'm going to spend some time thinking about how to handle attachments. The thing is, like, I could just have like an attachment. So let me talk a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to have one other column here. It's going to be a sequence. And the sequence is going to increment for every insert ever done. So my data is going to start to look like this. 1, 2, this isn't valid JSON, but you get the idea, right? So the idea here is that sequence 3 represents an update to foo. So foo is the ID, the unique ID that is exposed to the world. So and then the sequence ID is used to determine partly used to determine which one comes last. Actually, what that's used for doesn't matter so much right now. The point is that the one that comes later has a new revision number, so that means it's newer than that one. And so now if you fetch document ID foo, you get this value. The point I wanted to make is that it's not just as simple as adding attachment here, because you can have multiple attachments per update. So I had to think about how I want to store those. So the naive solution is to do this and just let attachments be part of this. It's really bulky because that means your attachment has to be stored in BASIC-Q4. So I really want the attachment to be stored as a blob. SQLite is really good at that. It's one of the nice things about it. But I need to think about how I want to handle that. Because I could have a separate attachments table as well. I like the simplicity of one table per database because that just makes it really nice and simple, but maybe that's not the best solution. Maybe I should create table foo attachments sequence. And I have the ID text. I have text file name. Maybe that's what I want. Blob. And then there's a foreign key relationship between a one-to-many relationship between foo and attachments with sequence ID, ID, and rev all matching. That might be the way to go. It's probably the best option. Anyway, I'll be thinking about that. I'm going to end, I think, here in just a moment. Let me see if I can merge my pull request yet. Looks like I got a red X. Something's still there. I'll have to go for JS instead. Oh, there's no buildable ghost source. I don't care. Why are you trying to build? Oh, I think debug that later. Not sure why people are trying to do that. With C. I thought this didn't require C though. I'm confused. I'll have to figure that out later. All right. Well, thank you for watching. I'm not sure if anybody's actually supposed to be there. I haven't had any chat. I guess there's a couple people watching, it looks like. But anyway, thank you for joining today. I'm going to try to do this every week. Don't know exactly where I'll be next week because I'll probably work on this in the meantime. But you're welcome to join again if you have questions about project or other things other than chatting next week. It would be great to hear from you then. So I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you next week. Until then, make it go.